Join the Alpha Mu Omega chapter and the Beta Chi Omega chapter tonight on Facebook Live at DFW IOTAS as we talk about the systemic racism in America. When do we breathe? It's going on tonight at DFW IOTAS on Facebook.
Hello all, my name is Brian Love. Thank you for joining the Alpha Mu Omega and the Beta Chi Omega alumni chapters of Iota Phi Theta webinar tonight called When Do We Breathe? Building relationships, inspiring development, getting engaged. That's an acronym for BRIDGE, and it's established to serve as a mechanism to foster positive relationships among diverse populations and to respond racially and culturally charged issues in the cities across America. The Bridge program is designed to address issues mainly behind the scenes, such as police and community relations, business and economic development, immigration, along with education. Bridge is unique in that it's comprised of business, civic, and community leaders who volunteer their time and services to study and improve race and cultural relations in the city and its institutions. It is not a board of directors, an organization, an action group. Instead, it is the process, a network and forum, and a convening agent and facilitator. It is among the longest sustainable community relations process in the country. The Bridge convenes, educates, and mobilizes community leaders on racial and cultural relations to improve the quality of life in inner cities communities. It accomplished its mission by educating its members and the community through multiple perspectives on the issues of racial and cultural relation presented and discussed during monthly meetings and also community forums like tonight. It also serves as a conduit of reliable information to city and county government and existing organizations. Our objectives of our call tonight is to identify race, cultural relations issues in our respective cities, inform leadership of the race and cultural relations issues in our city, to develop, advocate, and implement possible solutions to a real and potential cultural relation issues in our cities as well, and also to build and broker relationships between community groups, the mayor's office, and other municipal and civic agencies. I now will introduce our host for tonight, which will be Walter Washington, who's the secretary of the Beta Chi Omega alumni chapter in Arkansas, and also Sean Tate, who's the Polaris of the Beta Chi Omega alumni chapter in Arkansas. I yield the floor to you guys.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Walter Washington, and along with our chapter Polaris, Sean Tate, we're very grateful and thankful to be a part of this conversation. And Brother Tate, we're very thankful for his leadership at the chapter level here in Little Rock, Arkansas, and surrounding areas.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Sean Tate. I'm the chapter Polaris of the Beta Chi Omega chapter here in Little Rock, Arkansas. And once again, my secretary and also my state director, Walter Washington, will be helping us host this informational event that we need here. And I'm very grateful to have this opportunity. I just want to thank the Alpha Mu Omega alumni chapter in Dallas as well for giving us this opportunity to join you guys to talk about this necessary topic.
So at this time, I believe we're going to have an introduction of our panelists. And so for today's conversation, we would like to introduce the panel. Beginning with this panel, we have several individuals that are on the conversation for tonight. And I would like to open up the floor to where we have members of the law enforcement community, as well as an attorney who deals very heavily with civil issues and with civil rights matters. And so if we would like to bring them from backstage to give a great round of applause and allow them opportunity to introduce themselves to the platform as we have these great conversations about when do we breathe.
Good evening, everyone. Landon White, attorney based here out of Baltimore City. However, I do take on cases nationwide. I predominantly try to stick to civil rights matters, as well as everyone knows about police brutality, but also I like to make sure that people, regards to business litigation as well. In Baltimore, predominantly do a lot of criminal law, which has mostly underlings of civil rights in regards to constitutional law, Fourth and Fifth Right Amendments. So if you guys need me here, I'll be here for at least the next hour, and look forward to being on this panel today. Thank
you. I'm Kobe Tillman, detective in the state of Arkansas. It's a pleasure to even be here and to be able to speak to everyone. I look forward to hearing everyone's opinion and everyone's outlook on the different situations that we're going to speak about today. Thank you.
Hello. I'm Officer Walker's Guide. I work here, City Police, in Texarkana, Texas. My drive and goal is to make a difference and to give people hope out here, especially during these times. I've been working in law enforcement and corrections for about 5 or 6 years now, and that's my goal, is to give hope to all of us out here, and especially the Black community, and in the end, make a difference where it really counts, where we need to see it. Be that difference where we need to see the difference, and that's in this uniform. Thank you.
All right. Thank you guys so much for those wonderful introductions. Let's go ahead and get these first round of questions started. I just want to start off. I'm going to just open this up with Brother Landon White. Just got a quick question. I'm going to start off. How can civilians like us advocate for meaningful police and criminal justice reform?
I think everybody has a role to play in this battle for police reform. And it's not just police reform right now in Black Lives Matter. It's simply having officers understand the different cultural differences, as well as getting rid of what we call the bad apples. Some of the advocacy, every state is different. I believe we have 3 different, whether it's officers, detectives on this call from 3 different areas, which is amazing. But one of the main issues that I'm seeing is that everyone wants to say, okay, all cops aren't bad. These are the bad apples. However, I always chuckle and say, well, if you're not a bad apple, let me see that personnel file. And officers have a hard job to do. We all understand that. We all know that. A lot of times we're in these communities, and I think everybody on this call enjoys the benefit of being able to pick up their phone and call 911. If that ability was taken away, many of us would be vulnerable. Many of us would not know how to handle ourselves, because we have been living in a civilized communities for pretty much all our lives. So advocacy, being able to advocate, getting on these civilian review boards, getting access to officers' personnel file, and also filing a lawsuit. As much as we all want to make sure that, hey, we're marching in the streets, we need individuals to do that. As much as we want to say, hey, why is this person looting? Of course, no one on this panel is looting. It's not my job to loot. However, it is my job to represent the looters, who probably bring more attention than simply someone walking and say, okay, well, this person's looting. You weren't watching me, or you weren't giving me any attention when I was just marching or writing letters or trying to advocate at the state capitol for the state legislatures. However, now you want to listen. So everybody has a part to play. And in our part, we're starting now by doing this social media platform panel, as well as getting advocates involved, as well as making sure that we're all advocating certain things. Like I said, sit on those civilian review boards, as well as make sure individuals are trying to get into the personnel files of these officers. And those are the main two things for right now.
Thank you, Brother Landon White. Also, speaking of us trying to get involved with getting on these boards and stuff like that, how can we hold our city council accountable for the things that are going on in our community?
I'm not sure if you guys want me to go again, but I will. In regards to making sure we go about it, we have to have allies. So right now we have 2 officers that are currently on this panel. They're from our community. If they didn't have the badge on or the uniforms on, I would not know they were officers. Having these individuals and making sure that we're having that constant communication, and not just with our family members, and making them give us access to, okay, what politicians are pulling for police reform. When you guys go into these union meetings, who are they pulling for? Why are they pulling for them? Are they pulling for them because they know they aren't going to pass certain laws, or are they pulling for them, or is this an alternative that we should be voting for in the community? That's the reason why we have to protect the good officers, because I'm seeing a lot of our officers, black and white, who are advocating for us. They're the ones getting reprimanded. They're the ones being sent to desk duty. Desk duty. They're the ones not getting the overtime, and these things hinder you as you want to progress forward. So we have to make sure we back the good officers and have the hard conversations with our family members so that we know who to vote for. And at the end of the day, the main thing is making sure we get our people out here to vote. We have this new election, and it's not just, as a, Iota Phi Theta Fraternity Incorporated, we don't take either side. We have brothers that are Republicans, and we have brothers that are definitely Democrats. Okay. However, showing the power of, of the African American vote, whoever we vote for, as well as not only for president, but in the local election, is very, very important.
Yep.
And so, Landon, I'm glad that you brought that point up about bringing officers to the table, bringing law enforcement to the table to have that dialogue. And so I would like to turn that question over to those that call, both who are now detective and officer. And that's question to both of you is, how would you define community policing? And do you think it helps or hurts the relationship between law enforcement and the community, so especially after hearing of the solutions that Landon has shared just here briefly?
Community policing is very big. That's what I really base my job off of, because when you're working with the community, you learn your people. You learn what they like and what they don't like, who really will talk to officers and who won't. So community policing is always big, and I feel like you got to have a heart for your community if you're going to work in your community. That way you don't wind up in situations that you don't need to be in, nor that the citizens that you're policing need to be in.
I definitely agree. Community policing is very important. I feel like in the past we have just dictated or assumed what our community needed. So when it comes to community policing, it's making contact with the community, asking them, hey, what's the actual problem here? And what would you like to see change? There's no sense in us just coming up with different rules, different laws, different city ordinances, and putting those in place and writing tickets. And this is not helping the real situation in the community. So community policing fixes that part. It gets us involved with them involved in finding the best solution for the community.
Thank you for that. So when we bring into the part about the community, do you feel that you all, and then I'll say in general, because you may not be in a position to where you can speak directly for your particular municipality, but do you feel that law enforcement around the nation, or at least from those that you have connections with outside of your jurisdiction, have the support from their elected officials to equip them to handle the problems that they face on a daily basis?
I will say I'm not completely sure, or perhaps I'm not close enough to the surrounding areas. But I will say that I am proud that we have neighborhood coordinators who, you know, they take more time than the rest of us cops on the street, because that's their main job. I can't say that I've seen it in the surrounding areas or in some of these areas that's coming up in the news. It seems like they don't have that type of support. Um, I know with us, it comes down to just making time for that, and not just time. We all know that a lot of it is about money, but also allowing money to be put in that area that someone is specifically working on that goal, and that is their main job out on the street. Um, I'm afraid to say I don't see a lot of it elsewhere, and I'm not just talking about surrounding my city, but that is a question that I've had myself. Where is the support for the the police department as well as the city council to actually get out in the community, other than asking for votes?
Nationally, um, from my perspective, um, I think it's support there, but I think when it's an incident that's going to be a nationwide or worldwide incident, I feel that we're not being supported the way we should be, because we all took an oath and obligation, and we need to stand on it and stand firm on that, because um, you do have bad apples, and those bad apples do need to be weaned out at all times. So I don't really feel like that we get the support that we need when it's dealing with a large situation.
I'm not sure we're losing them or
Oh
not. I'm
yeah.
not too sure, guys. But I'll just, I guess, piggyback. Kobe, can you hear me? I'll just, I guess, piggyback in regards to what he was saying in regards to, some of the bad apples and the pressure I know Kobe probably goes through in regards to just being a young officer. So now when Kobe goes to you go to any family function, and it's you're going to have individuals that have all levels of success, and depending on where you're coming from. I know in Baltimore City, I can say certain neighborhoods and people will be like, okay, he's definitely from there, or or I've heard of those areas. And what happens is that you now have to sit and have those discussions. But what I'm finding out is that even in my own family is that no one wants to really have those wants to have that difficult dialogue, because they don't want to offend the officer in the family, as vice versa. The officer in the family has a lot of stress on them because what they do on their day to day. So on one hand, you're the officer that's arresting rapists, child molesters, murderers in the community, so you do have a hard job to do, right? But on the other hand, you also know that there are procedures that should be put in place to protect your own people. as well as you've probably been on a training or been out on a call and have seen some of your officers act in a way that is not reasonable at all under the law. So it's tough, but this is why we're having this dialogue, and this is why it's important.
Thank you to the panel. Speaking of all these situations, of how this job is very stressful and how it can be very demanding, and also dealing with certain people in certain areas in the community, I just want to ask, police officers on the call, what do you guys do to calm yourselves down throughout the day to make sure that things don't go into a horrible situation, or things escalate into a dangerous situation for you, and these potential situations come about? And also, do you guys have psychic evaluations before you're hired, and or during your tenure as an officer as well?
Other than eating, to calm ourselves down, it's about intentional making that intentional decision to pull yourself out when it's going there. And so I've seen other officers do it as well, between just taking a moment, taking a small break, to talk to family, to talk about something else other than the job, or even down to something little as playing a game on the phone. Just anything to relieve that type of stress and help us to regather ourselves. I will say we do have psych evals before, during the hiring process. As far as throughout the years, I don't see that a whole lot. Honestly, I would like to see that more. I believe that's something we need to add in. I'm not sure about any other department, but I don't believe we do it, and I believe it's something that's needed.
Yeah, so if I can, I guess, just chime in really briefly on that. One of I believe it was the Arlington Sterling case, and a lot of times, in this work, we watch and follow a lot of the different attorneys. One attorney I've been watching probably since law school. Everyone knows him now from the George Floyd case, but he's been doing this for probably over 15 years now. Chris Stewart, I believe it was the Arlington Sterling case. And it took them almost a year and a half of litigation just to get the personnel file. And if they weren't on it, if they didn't file appeals because they were denied at the lower court levels to actually get in the personnel file, I believe it's the case. And, it was a situation where the training instructor basically called the young man nuts. And said he was more than likely going to kill someone based on his evaluation via the training. And these are the officers that are being hired, that are being partnered with some of our Black officers. And it doesn't happen everywhere, but it seems like it's happening a little too often in areas. And what's happening is that when we don't have attorneys that are litigating a lot of these cases, in trying to get to maximize the dollar amount, we're getting a lot of settlements, and with settlements, we don't get any precedent. So we all hear about not having precedent in order to move forward or to get past summary judgment on a lot of these cases. Well, that's because it's kind of the attorney's fault as well as the families, because we have a dilemma. Do we want to make sure the families get some type of compensation money-wise? Or do we also want to make sure we fight to the point where we set precedent in making sure we're able to go about and get over qualified immunity, as well as to possibly file certain Monell claims? And that's kind of going in a little bit more than I would like to. But yeah, these are tough.
So, and I'm glad you brought up those points because that kind of brings us a little bit closer to some of the conversations we had earlier in this meeting about the support. And so we see there's a big defund the police movement going on across the nation, or at the very minimum, a reallocation of resources and funds and monies and et cetera and budget from law enforcement agencies to other social initiatives that may be in the government level. So with that, what does that actually look like? And is that a viable solution towards the systemic problems that we're facing in today's society?
You have anyone you were trying to specifically ask the question to, or?
Thank you for clarifying that. That is for the entire panel, because I do want to hear it from both from law enforcement, from what your opinion, especially as it connects with community policing, and from the law perspective of it before we kind of open it up further discussion to everyone else on the panel.
For me, I'm not seeing how defunding the police would make this big, great change. And maybe Mr. White, you can help me with that. I'm not really seeing it. When I hear that, I think of the type of training that I'm going to miss out on, the type of training that we're going to have to cut back on because of it. And I'm not sure about everybody, but for us, there's certain training that we have to go through quarterly and just different things of that nature. So we're always taking some kind of class. And that requires money, whether we're sending officers somewhere else to get this training or we are bringing an instructor into our training center. That takes money. And in my head, that's my issue with defunding the police, because I feel like it's going to cut the cost and it's going to cut back down on my training. And it looks like the type of training that we need when it comes to de-escalating, especially when dealing with mental health subjects, it looks like everybody's not getting that training. So defunding, in my eyes, in my head, it is definitely making sure that we're not going to get it. So maybe Mr. White, you can help me with that.
Well, I'm kind of on the fence here, but I will say that the discussion being had is needed. Defund the police, it's a term that everyone is running with. I think it's more about reallocating the actual resources, as well as to have a city that is going about making sure those resources go back into the community. In a lot of our communities, though, the crime is abundant. I mean, you can't sit up here and say that in majority metropolitan cities that you can, certain cities that you actually feel safe. So having police officers are important. But the fact that this dialogue is starting to be had now to say, okay, do you really need 4 tanks? Do you really need tactical training when at the most you're using this once a year, and that these resources can be, given down from the state level and not just the different municipalities. But we also have to understand too that police officers at this point in time in our community, with capitalism kind of taking over, that police officers right now are the main middle class. So do we want to defund the resources that are in the community? And a lot of our community are not do not have the information given to them on the opportunities that's given to you when you become an officer. So, because I'm, whether depositions or looking at how much officers are making, with overtime and years of service, you can, in majority of major cities and even a lot of smaller cities, once you get to that 5 to 10 year mark, you can make 80 to 100 grand, basically just by doing overtime. So, do we want to cut the legs from a lot of the young officers coming up and being able to be a part of that middle class? Or do we want to use that as a recruitment tool? And simply the defund the police has come about because literally officers are killing citizens that are unarmed, okay, and are saying that it's reasonable. This would not be a discussion if officers weren't killing unarmed citizens or citizens that aren't putting you in danger, because you have a lot of citizens that are upstanding citizens that do not break the law that love guns. So if you come across many of my peers who are legally carrying our firearms, it's going to be I don't want to be shot. I know my peers don't want to be shot. If we just simply have a gun, and getting rid of that perfect victim is very important. So once again, the defund the police, kind of this slogan, just like Black Lives Matter, is only a thing now because we're literally seeing people being killed in the streets that are unarmed, and that just needs to stop. So whether we want to continue having this defund the police in order to move the resources, that would be great. But at the end of the day, we're only having to defund the police scenario because people are unarmed citizens are being killed. We weren't having it with racial profiling when people getting pulled over. We weren't having it when, hey, let's zero tolerance, and let's from New York to here in Maryland or Baltimore City, let's lock up anybody for loitering or trespassing. We're literally having this defund, and at those times, those arrest rates in New York City and Baltimore City, not only were police officers making more money for overtime, but lawyers were making 3 times the amount of money they were making now, because we were having 3 and 4 times the amount of arrests. So now with less arrests, we're making less money in the courts. We're making less money for police officer overtime. We're making less money on the attorney side. We're literally only here because people are killing. Officers are killing unarmed citizens, and that just needs to stop.
I'm a I'm really like landing with this situation. I'm really kind of on the fence, and it's a really tough subject to talk about because before I'm anything, I'm still a black man in America, and I too, just like other citizens, have been racially profiled even as a police officer. So I understand both sides of the fence here, and defund the police. I feel like at the end of the day, we need each other as citizens. We need the police, and as the police, we need the citizens. So I just feel like we need to start taking more time, learning other cultures, and with mental health. That's a lot of the problem that we're not really tackling in America's mental health.
So when we look at it from that perspective, like you said, it sounds like that it has its proponents and its opponents when it comes to defunding the police. Is there a middle ground to where there could be resources that are shared amongst multiple agencies? So, for example, what if there was an opportunity to say share funding or share resources with nonprofit organizations when it comes to making those mental calls? I know that in big case for child protective services, when they have to go inside a home, they'll a lot of times they'll call for police to be there, be present just in case, but it's actually the social worker who is making the call, and the police are just there for protective support. Are those areas to where we can utilize a medium to where we can come together collaboratively from agencies that handle those type of needs to agencies who enforce the law? And that's a question that I would like to pose to our officers first, because you all see a lot of these types of calls, I presume, on a regular and reoccurring basis.
That's a great question. I would like to see more of that. I think the problem comes down to, even though it is a CPS call, and we're just standing by, I think it comes down to at what point do they cross the line with us? If things go wrong, you know, the protector in me is willing to be there when CPS calls, when any of the uh, mental health core places they call. I want to be there to make sure that they're okay. But at some point, that line is crossed to where it's no longer a CPS problem, it's a police problem. And we have to do more than just protect. However, it's a gray area for me, as far as especially dealing with mental health subjects. It's a gray area because when certain lines are crossed, the question is who's pulling rank now. I can only protect you so much without being the head person. It's no longer your call, now it's mine. So that's a gray area for me. And I think that's something that needs to be clearly defined.
It's kind of crazy because since I've been working in this small area, I've got a chance to deal with both situations, mental health, and I got a chance to deal with child protective services. Um, Nobody's going to let somebody come into their home and take their child. It's just a protector in most parents. Um, Same deal with mental health. They having mental issues, so they don't want you there. And I'm kind of like our first class Scott. It is a gray area, and most of the time, those other agencies, what they'll do is they'll kind of look at us like, "Hey, what are you gonna do? You know, you supposed to be here to protect me and them." So there is a gray area, and like it's a gray area that need to be cleared up. But me, from my standpoint, I just feel like it's never going to get cleared up because we have poor communications with other agencies like that, as far as CPS and the mental health institutions. And I think we need to just start coming together and figuring out better situations to help us and them.
And thank you all for the feedback, because we always want to ensure that we share with those viewers and who are watching here tonight. So thank you, viewers, for tuning in. But we always want to make sure that we're providing them information and clarity on some of the scenarios that could be happening in their backyard. And I know it is a tough occupation to endure. And a lot of times we as citizens, we're not privy to what happens beyond what the media shares with us, but we have to be very prepared for it. And that's where I do want to kind of switch the conversation from that line, from that standpoint, to more about citizen interactions. And so, Brother Tate, if you can kind of, I think you had some questions previously where we had kind of discussed in separate dialogue, referring to those interactions accordingly.
Yes, thank you, Brother Washington. So, of course, a lot of our problems seem to happen, where a lot of the situations seem to be gone viral, is from these routine traffic stops. And just like a lot of people that may be watching, and of course, you guys may have been involved in some way, shape, form, or fashion. You know, we get pulled over by an officer, and we're like, "Hey, we don't know what to do." So, when we're dealing with that situation, how should we? Like, I've just been pulled over by a police officer, and regardless if I obeyed or disobeyed the traffic laws, uh, what is the proper steps to take to ensure my safety and that of my passengers?
Okay, I guess I can give my perspective as an attorney. Um, a lot of times I tell my clients to, um, the key thing is making it home, right? You make it home, and then on the back end, you can sue. You can, if your rights were violated, then, whether myself or some of my peers in the community, we will attack and go about protecting your rights. Okay. Now that's the doing the cost evaluation is whether or not it's worth it is something else that we could talk about as well in another discussion. However, when an officer approaches your car, you have to understand that they really don't want to be there as well. It is their job. Okay, so and having this tough discussion of making it home, this is not to give an officer any type of leeway at all. Okay, because even though they have a job to do, they must be professional. There's no way we can say, oh, well, they have a tough job, and hold an officer to a lower set of accountability than we even hold our fast food restaurant work owners. Okay, so if you're an officer, you're getting paid, you should be professional. You should follow your training. Okay. However, an officer's getting out of his car. He doesn't know what's in the car. So let's say it's dark at night. It's your duty to make sure that you are de-escalating as much as you can from your end. Roll your windows down, put your hands on the steering wheel, turn on all the lights in your car, doing as much, even in your speech. Of course, some people are more personal than others, but hey, good evening, officer. Good morning, officer. How you doing, officer? And by that first interaction, a lot of times that officer will know, or you will be able to gauge what's going on from that officer. Okay. If that officer's having a bad day and you get that initial interaction, then you may have to escalate even more. Okay. If he's asking you questions, you have every right. You have every right to ask, why are you pulling me over? What are you pulling me over for? Okay. However, I tell most clients that whatever he's pulling you over for, whether or not he had an actual right to pull you over or he did not have one, these are issues that we fight in court. We don't fight them out when we're being pulled over. In fact, an officer pretty much has every right to be there to, if they feel threatened, even if they're not supposed to pull you over, if they feel threatened, they have every right to use reasonable force based on their training. Okay. And officers make mistakes. That's the reason why they get so much leeway. Okay. It's important that sorry guys, I'm getting a call to come in. It's important that we make sure that we do get home and understand. Now, once the issues start, can I search your car? There are ways to say no. I never let them search your car. At the end of the day, it's been even times myself or I have clients all the time that don't know that, their son or daughter took the car out for a ride and maybe left a piece of a marijuana stick in the car, or you let your brother hold your car a month ago and you never had it detailed. I had a situation recently where a shooting happened and the gun cases were in the car, and now here's this person did not know, and with a basic detailing of a car, gun casings were found in the car. The only way no detective knows if you have gun cases in your car, more than likely a gun was being fired from inside your car. So, these are things that you'd be surprised that most people don't actually know or understand. But you have every right to say no. And if the officer says, get out the car, officer, I'm not giving you right to search my vehicle. I'm not giving you right to search my person. However, I'm going to comply and get out of the way. These are things that we must understand and know, and this is how the law is written, that you save face, do whatever you have to do while you're in the car, and then afterwards we'll fight. And the goal is that we're fighting for someone who can speak up for themselves rather than someone who we have to piece the story together because they're no longer here. And that's a sad reality right now in these times. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. On traffic stops, I know attorney was a little different, but it's a deal that we work up called the Fourth Amendment. I feel like once you stopped, you need to do whatever you do, or whatever you need to do, whatever you need to do to be safe. You need to keep your hands on the steering wheel, um, turn on your lights, um, be respectful, and listen to what the officer is trying to tell you. I walked up to many cars and people just screaming, yelling, "What you pulled me over for? Why did you do this? Why did you do that?" I never got a chance to tell these people why I put them over or what exactly happened. Um, and it's our job as officers to make sure that you go home safe, and it's your job as a citizen to make sure that officer gets back to his car and drives off safely. Um, but I feel like with the traffic stops, just do what the officer asks you, and if that officer made a mistake, you can worry about that after the traffic stop is over with, because they can always be corrected, or you can always have a civil suit or lawsuit. Every officer needs to be professional at all times, no matter the situation or what's going on, because that's our job. That's what we get paid to do. So we need to do it to the best of our ability.
If you don't mind, let me just kind of walk through this a little bit. Say you're getting stopped or whatever. I agree with everybody else saying, if you would turn on your lights, keep your hands visible. Well, uh, before that, a lot of people will start rummaging around. That's a no-no. Um, if possible, it would be great to be able to go ahead and get your driver's license and your cell phone out if you want to go on Facebook Live. But too much movement is not okay. And I'm saying that as a cop because I don't know you and I don't know what's in your car. And I'm also saying this as a Black woman that's trying to look out for our Black kings and queens. That is a no-no. Too much movement is a no-no. However, if you're able to get your phone out, you want to go ahead and start your Facebook Live just to be safe. Set it up there and then put your hands on the steering wheel. I'm not gonna say be super nice. I'm just not. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna kiss your tail, and I don't need you to kiss mine. All I ask is that you comply. Uh, as far as professionally, a professional cop will go ahead and tell you why you're being stopped, and go ahead and ask for your information, all of that stuff. Sometimes if that cop is not automatically telling you why he or she stopped you, that's a sure sign that they got a chip on their shoulder. And like attorney said, you need to be more cautious and try to de-escalate even more for your safety. Even when it comes down to if you're not able to get your driver's license out, or if you do already have a weapon in the car and your driver's license is near that weapon, go ahead and be honest and straightforward. I would prefer someone tell me, hey, I got my weapon here, so I don't want to reach for my driver's license right now. Okay, fine. I'm not going to demand you reach for it because once again, you've already told me what's there. And I mean, I can just take your information, write your information down. So comply and think through some things. You don't want to do a whole lot of movement like that. And it's always best to just be straightforward. And about the Facebook Live thing, because I know a lot of us are even, I've heard of neighbors coming out or somebody driving down the road and they see another brother or sister getting pulled over. They'll stop and start their Facebook Live. That's great. hey, this is what I asked to make sure that that Facebook Live is effective for you if something happens and you end up in court. I do ask is that once you start that, you set your phone up there, it started, you go ahead and get a name. If they don't want to give their badge number, whatever, just make sure it's face where they can, Facebook Live can see the officer, and any other information that's given. I mean, you make sure that your Facebook Live is able to pick that up. But I can't stress enough the movement. Yeah. If you already know you got some on you, don't do a whole lot of movement. Just say, hey, I do have some here, and for my safety, I don't want to reach. And that's perfectly fine. At that point, the officer will either take it right down your information and run you, or they may ask you to step out the car just to get some separation. I've done that before several times. If somebody told me that their weapon is in a glove compartment or somewhere, or in the center console, hey, do you mind just stepping out? Just talk to me out here just for your safety, my safety, so that we can, make things a little bit less stressful, a little bit more relaxed. So if that answers your question.
I got another little quick deal to speak on. Facebook Live. Facebook Live. You want to be really, really, really careful with it because me personally, I've actually received death threats because people was on Facebook Live and my face was put out there. So as a citizen, I say if you go record it on your phone. Everybody don't need to know your business. And once you put that out there, you need to know that it's never going to leave. And you can also, if somebody come in on their negative post, they can take their post and they can be charged off their post from your Facebook, and it can also be used in court negatively against you, as well as a positive, like to help save someone's life. So that's why I say you should always, just kind of be mindful of the company that you keep.
Yeah, I see there's a comment in regards to, I guess, what are your rights in regards to searching of the vehicle? Is it often thought you must allow a search based off probable cause? Okay. All right. So to be clear, in regards to probable cause, most officers don't know what probable cause is. Okay. It's a real catchy term. They know real legalese. They probably heard it from a prosecutor before. However, it goes into a lot of different case law and everything else. Okay. Now, there's two types of forms that people really don't understand, which is called RAS, reasonable articulable suspicion. Okay, which is a slightly lower term than probable cause. You need RAS, okay, in order to stop a vehicle. So if you follow behind me for 5 to 10 minutes, you're going to find a violation, whether I rolled through a stop or I was, I wasn't all the way in my lane, or I made a turn, I didn't put my signal on. If you follow anybody long enough, you'll pretty much find RAS to pull them over. Okay. Probable cause, some of the factors that go about it. If you're looking suspicious, if there's the smell of marijuana or any type of smell of drugs, if there might have been a crime in the area, the vehicle fits the subscription, that's a subscription description, excuse me. There's many different variables, and this is why you go about making sure you fight it in court, because a officer will say, well, I have probable cause to stop you. Okay, well, it's not right. Well, does he have RAS to stop you? But he has probable cause to search your car. Maybe he does, maybe he does not. That's the reason why I said before that you say, I am not giving you consent to search my vehicle. Okay, if he asks you to get out, you must get out. And then in getting out, you go to the side of the road, put your hands up, put your hands behind your back, you sit, you make sure you get through the actual traffic stop. And normally they have their body cameras, as well as a lot of different police stations or detectives or the procedure is that they'll actually have a waiver form. Are you giving me permission to search your car, or or do you want to speak to us later on? I had a client that was actually smart, and he wrote on the waiver form on the back of it, "I am being forced to sign this," and he signed his name and dated it. For some reason, the prosecutor didn't see it until literally I'm sitting here. I asked for the original, which a lot of times, attorneys, we don't actually ask for the original. We ask for just the discovery and getting the actual original file and doing an inspection. And if my client didn't tell me, he was like, "Oh, I signed something saying I did not give up my right," and saying he didn't give up the right. The case was actually thrown out and dismissed. I thought I was very smart of the client. So once again, and if that officer does not have probable cause to search, that's something that'll be done at a motions hearing later on down the line. And then when that happens, anything found or anything that comes from whether you give a confession or anything that happens from then at that point, all that will be thrown out. So make sure you understand the difference between RAS, because an officer, for the most part, can stop you in a vehicle for almost anything. Now, stopping you on the street, that has to be, has to be a little bit higher level, as well as it goes into whether or not you're actually detained or arrested. An officer, "Hey, let me talk to you for a second." And even for myself, "Okay, what's going on?" Or I could say, "What do you want?" If I'm not driving, if I'm just on the street, walking down the street, okay. They want to ask me questions. What do you want to ask me questions for? Do I fit the description? I'm leaving, and I tell clients all the time, say, "Look, am I free to leave?" That's the main thing. Am I free to leave? Sometimes they try to get around it. They try to say, "Well, no, just sit here. You're free to leave, but I just want to talk to you." No, am I free to leave? Because I'm free to leave, I'm going to keep walking. Okay. However, also, once you're detained, which becomes detainment and the actual arrest, okay, they have to have probable cause for that arrest. Okay. And what happens is that if you're not sure, if you don't ask if you're free to leave, if you don't try to walk off, now there's no saying, if we have a motion to say whether or not, "Hey, I asked to leave, I was not able to leave." And you don't have to actually ask it. It's just that a reasonable person would have to believe that they weren't able to move or had free will to get up and leave. And once you're arrested, if that officer did not have any right to stop you or hold you down at that point or that moment, then you're free to leave. However, this is the reason why, detectives or officers, and we have them here, I'm all for recording, because I see a lot of reports, that based on the body camera footage are different than what's on the body camera footage. Okay. However, officers are now, and over the last 2 years, especially in Baltimore, are getting smarter and saying, "You know what? I'm not going to write this extra information here because I know there's body worn camera footage." And now you're seeing more arrests being, more officers filing probable cause based on these actual body camera footage. And the body camera footage, it's hurting a lot more clients than it is helping. However, those who are innocent, we need that body camera footage because it is helping us. So that's what I'll say in regards to probable cause, RAS, and the difference between an actual stopping you in the car and stopping you on the street while you're just walking or jogging.
And it sounded like that you brought up an excellent point, that it sounded like also Detective Tillman and Officer Walker Scott was mentioning how we have to be careful with our Facebook Live. We may be thinking that we're using this to prove our case in point, when in actuality we're just self-incriminating ourselves. So
yeah. Another situation, and I know Detective Tillman knows. Normally, when an officer is approaching you, a detective is approaching you, they already have what they feel as though is what their case is. Okay. And detective, you might not want to shake your head too much. You might be giving some of your strategies away. Okay. Because at the end of the day, an officer can has every right to tell you whatever they want to tell you. Oh no, I'm not here for you. I'm not here. But can I ask you a couple questions? Oh, you're not a suspect. But can I ask you a couple questions? Oh, it's no big deal if you had a gun, and so and so. And now, those charges are just, they're just racking them up, So anytime an officer asks, can they speak to you? No, no, I don't want you to speak to me, and if you're being an officer in that capacity, okay, and you have every right to tell an officer, no, am I free to leave? And if that officer wants to stop and wants to speak with you, I'm automatically, hey, you can speak to me in front of a lawyer. I want my attorney. And what a lot of people don't understand is that you have to actually ask for your attorney. You cannot just say, oh, well, I'm going to hire me an attorney, or, because then, and keep talking, or I want an attorney, and then you start the conversation again. Okay. Because once you start that dialogue again, now that officer has every right to continue speaking with you. Okay. Once you ask for an attorney, you just shut up. I want my attorney, and be quiet. It's always best you guys are in different areas, that you guys reach out to local counsel. I don't care if it's a new kid just graduated and just became barred out of law school. Okay. You get that kid's number, you put it in your pocket. I know when I first started, everyone in East Baltimore, for the most part, had my number in some type of way. And you make sure that if anything happens or you're being questioned, you ask. It's too often I've had clients thinking no big deal. The officer has probably seen the video. The detective has probably asked questions about what the car looks like, what time the shooting happened, and literally they go from there. They'll say, were you here at this time frame? Or, what were you driving? Does anybody else have access to your vehicle? I mean, they're just boxing you in to pretty much have a layup at trial, and you're not giving your attorney even a sense, because if just very quickly, briefly, if an officer gets there, they're normally there after the fact. If they're there after the fact, it's their duty under the law to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt. Okay? It's hard for them to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt unless they fill in the blanks. Majority of the time, it's their own defendant filling in the blanks for them. There are no witnesses. A lot of times the witnesses in a lot of our communities don't even want to come forward a lot of times. A lot of times it's the actual individual themselves putting themselves in that environment. And that's even for innocent individuals as well. Don't think because you did not do it, or you had no involvement, that you won't be arrested and you won't be convicted either. So if anyone's ever asking you a question and they're in detective mode, say no, you can speak to a lawyer. If that means you're going to be arrested for that night, I'd rather spend 12 to 24 hours in a cell than I would to spend 6 months fighting a case, or maybe even becoming convicted. So these things are important.
So there's some great dialogue, and for those who are, thank you again for watching and viewing in. We have a few more minutes to share and spare, and so what we kind of want to do is we want to get closer towards the end of the conversation, which is going to be a kind of a closing question part of this. And so with that, we do want to kind of open up the conversation to those who haven't had a chance to speak on something that they felt was very dear and important to the dialogue that we're holding this evening. I know there's more comments, and so even though we may have to have a follow-up after this one, because folks are asking about what some other information we should include when we're documenting our interactions with officers, some of the feedback from Detective Tillman and Officer Walker Scott, as well as Landon a lot of feedback people are requesting to place in the comments. So, we do want to ask if you have an opportunity to after this dialogue for us to post some of this commentary. This would be great, as well as information on how to reach each of you in your regard, respective professions, so that way members of the community can stay in contact and stay in touch accordingly. But before we kind of close out, as we said, where do we go from here? What's next? How do we got all these questions, we got all these answers, but what's going to be the real solution to what's going out there in our daily lives today? And I know that's a big question to ask for just only 10 minutes remaining, but I do want to open it up to the panel to kind of chew and at least give a minute of reflection to share with our viewers.
I feel like where we going from here is we being brought together. Um, we got to go through something to get to where we trying to go, and we just gotta start coming together and start loving each other as officers, as men and women, as people and citizens of the United States. We just gotta start coming together and sit down and having these type of discussions. That way, we can start trying to move forward. We got to go through something to get to where we're trying to go, and we just gotta start coming together and start loving each other as officers, as men and women, as people and citizens of the United States. We just gotta start coming together and sit down and having these type of discussions. That way, we can start trying to move forward.
All right. Anyone else like to share? Because this is a heavy topic that many of us would like to continue the conversation on, and there's more to be discussed from this. And I know, as Landon, as you mentioned earlier, about having, just regardless if it's a new person who's new to council or is very seasoned to council, is getting connected with your local council. I know here in Arkansas, for those who may not have the financial capability to do so, but is there a national platform that you're aware of that we can share with our viewers and those who are chiming in today, that they can kind of say, hey, this is where I can know where to find counsel in my respective area?
Well, I know here in Baltimore, I've been doing a little bit more policy work over the last year, and I'm more of giving feedback. There are advocates. Everyone has a role to play. As much as people don't like to hear it, even from our own communities, once again, everyone from the looters all the way to, the lawyers who are advocating, trying to push the needle or trying to get a judge to get some type of ruling. There are advocates in pretty predominantly every major city that deal with legislation. Okay. I would say reach out to them in regards to what they're trying to push during whatever your next session is. I know the Maryland General Assembly's next session starts normally around the second week in January and goes all the way through April. Probably I'll get calls within the next between October through December from different nonprofits, advocates who are trying to pass certain legislation, and they'll ask me my opinion in regards to, hey, based on what you're litigating in court, how do you feel about cash bails, or how do you feel about individuals being able to vote? What are some of the criminal laws that should be more harsh, less harsh? In your opinion, even as a defense attorney, because I'm in the mix. I'm dealing with everybody from the firemen who's been 20 years, but his son got caught smoking some weed, or the to the gangsters, and the one guys who aren't afraid to go to jail for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. They just don't want to spend the rest of their life in prison. So you have this wide range of individuals that you're dealing with as a defense attorney. So my insight is just as good as a prosecutor who's dealing with victims of some of these crimes and are trying to also protect the victim just as much as I'm trying to protect those who are innocent, or give those who may not be innocent, give them a second chance at life. And that's what's important for both of us to fight on both sides. So get in contact with those advocates, and make sure, as you kind of move forward, that we continue pushing the needle forward, because I had a judge for the first time in one of the I won't say which county, but let's say it's somewhere across the bridge on the Eastern Shore, which most people would think are one of the more racist counties in the state of Maryland. And me and the judge had I had to, about 2 minutes in, I had to look at the judge like, okay, you sure you want my my honest opinion? Like, are we really going to have this tough dialogue now? Because I might have to see you again. I probably won't. I don't like coming out all the way out here to the Eastern Shore, but you want to have this tough dialogue. And in having that dialogue, I understood in regards to, this judge saying, hey, how do we get, I'm a, I want to say, gender, but I'm a white person. Okay. I can't come out and say, hey, just let an officer do whatever they want, and then you fight it at trial. I can't do that. I got to make sure that if I'm able to, if I'm a white person, I want to say, man or woman, how am I supposed to relay that to the NAACP, relay that to them? And I said, hey, well, the best person to relate to, the best people are the solo attorneys. So what are you as a judge, or you that's been practicing law for 30 years and seeing the access to information and how solo attorneys are falling to the wayside? What are you going to do to bridge the gap between judge, attorney that's actually in the community fighting for the people, and getting us together in a room with the NAACP, National Urban League, or whoever the young base of nonprofits is, to continue this dialogue to say, hey, we want to make it home on one end. On the other end, if we'll fight it in court, and if we have judges that may not look like me, but are you really going to go against your voter base and put this officer in jail? Are you going to do that? So don't tell me to tell my clients to acquiesce and fight it in court if you're not going to put the officers in jail, if you're not going to find the officers at fault. So these are the dialogues that we're having. So I thank the looters, and they're going to jail. Let me make sure it's clear. The looters are going to jail. I thank them. I also will represent them as well, because they're needed. But along the line are going to be professionals like that are sitting on this panel that make sure that we continue to push the needle forward, simply because we have to. And it's just for our future. So that's it, guys.
I was just going to say, from here, it's a matter of educating our people, sticking together, as well as my thing is being the difference where I want to see the difference. And that is something that I try to push my family and friends to do, is you be that difference. You stand up. And as he said, everybody, all of us have a part. You and I may not fight the same way. However, I'm going to fight. I'm going to hold my end. And we just need everybody else to do the same.
Brother Landon White, Brother Kobe Tillman, and Sister Walker Scott, the Alpha Mu Omega and the Beta Chi Omega alumni chapters of Iota Phi Theta Fraternity Incorporated would like to thank you for your participation and willingness to be a part of this ongoing conversation that we plan to continue to have within our community. Of course, stay on the lookout for part 2 of this webinar, which will be next week, September the 16th, where we continue these discussions. Our goal is really just to make sure that we are developing and advocating and implementing possible solutions. So thank you everyone for your time, and until next time, stay safe and God bless.
Join the Alpha Mu Omega chapter and the Beta Chi Omega chapter tonight on Facebook Live at DFW IOTAS as we talk about the systemic racism in America. When do we breathe? It's going on tonight at DFW IOTAS on Facebook.